Now, we've heard about where the barriers are, structural barriers, competition amongst the various age groups, competition amongst projects trying to receive subsidies and financial assistance, maybe a lack of security, lack of perception with respect to what the problems actually are. The question is, what should we do about this? In 6 cities, and I believe that their representatives are amongst us today, people have dealt with this topic. They have tried to figure out what could be done. They have developed some recommendations, and I'd like them all to come up to the stage.
Brighton. Who will speak for Brighton? Yeah. You'll all come up together, please. Die jetzt kommen, stellen einzelne Aspekte, Projekte.
Now, all of these representatives will be presenting projects, experience, etc. I think you all know who you are, so that makes life easier for me. Okay. As a group, you have developed recommendations, working as a team. And they're going to present them to you. This is going to be done in English. So before we continue, does anyone need a hearing aid or maybe a headset? If so, there are still some.
It'll be very exciting to hear what you came up with. And I'd like you, please, Gundula, to start maybe. It's your home ground. You feel comfortable about doing it? Okay. So, what is your recommendation?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Roethe, for asking. I think the partners will forgive me if I say this now in German, because they know exactly what I'm going to say.
Well, we've already heard a lot about this cross-sectional or cross-sectoral cooperation. And in the meantime, it is really like an integral part of ourselves. And this is something that we've seen throughout the presentations this morning. But when we started drafting this concept and applying for a grant with the European Union, it was some sort of assumption. We thought that if we really want to address this specific target group of people, we most probably need a network of people working in the care sector, in the health sector, cultural sector, and in social affairs. And this is when we started the project and said, okay, this is a key factor. And we have actually seen proof in all of the experiences from the individual cities. However, this cross-sectoral cooperation is something that not only with us, but everywhere in Europe is a huge challenge, which is why our recommendation is to start developing a common and joint understanding of what creative aging actually is and what it can bring us in the individual areas, cultural, social affairs, care and the health sector. What can the policymakers do to help us in that? So what is required is this joint willingness to cooperate, and what is needed is a structure that enables such collaboration, and we believe that there should be some support on the political side as well.
Thank you, Gundula. I'm from the City of Gothenburg. And is the microphone off or on? Okay. It's on? Sorry. Can you hear me? Yeah. And one of the recommendations we would like to send to our policymakers is that we want to emphasize, not only promote, but to emphasize that the inclusive and accessible cultural facilities and activities must be inclusive and accessible. Sorry, my English. So we encourage really to work strategically to ensure the accessibility for older adults, and especially those people who are not in ordinary life or regularly take part or engage in cultural activities. So we have a lot of barriers to remove, and it can be, as we have seen here, it can be admission prices, physically barriers, but also we need to work a lot with our outreach strategies And we have also discussed a lot during our different examples here how we invite people due to the different kinds of interests, the backgrounds, all the diversity. So the details in how we promote and address and invite people is something I bring with me from this project, and we want to emphasize that for policymakers to include this. Thank you. Jantine?
I'm next in line. Hello, my name is Jantine Verver. I'm from the city of Leeuwarden. I work at the culture department, and as we have seen throughout, as Gundula already said, is you have to work with different departments, but it's also very important to get funding from different departments, because as we have seen that if you start a project, money is important if you want to continue working with it. But if you only get money from one department, as for example culture, because it's cultural participation, it stops after several years. So it's also important to get health on board, or education on board, or all the different departments that it's linked to the project. So cross-sectoral funding is one of the things I will take with me to my city, and as a recommendation for my policymakers and myself, because I'm a policymaker. And that brings me to the next one, and that is inclusion is a long-term investment. It takes a long time to get the trust of the people you want to invite in your project, but to keep them there is also one of the barriers, as Kersten talks about. You have to lower them, but that's also one of the things the policymakers or the politicians have to involve in. It's also about money. So yeah, money makes the world go round. It's a thing, but it's very important. And that is what I take with me. And I'll introduce Sven to you.
Thank you. I'm Sven from the city of Ostend. The policy I would like to recommend is intergenerational exchange. As we've seen, the lack of intergenerational exchange, the lack of intergenerational meeting between younger and elder people, it creates social diffusion, a lack of social cohesion. It creates splitting of funds, as we've seen with Reiner's presentation. And all of the cities, it was a common denominator, all of the cities found that the promotion of intergenerational meeting, exchange, and co-participating is a structural need and needs to be promoted. This was very interesting to see that it was everywhere we found the same experience. Introducing Reiner again.
Thank you. Is this working? Okay. Yeah, Rainer Schmock-Barter again from City of Berlin. So in my recommendation, I can be very short on this because I mentioned it earlier. Is we should have more European exchange on the topic of creative aging, because as a City of Berlin, we have learned a lot from our partners, and culture as a health topic. So it's completely new, not only for Berlin, I think, but also for Munich, maybe a bit. So I think there is so much to learn outside, and we have seen that many cities in Europe have experiences on that topic. So we should go further a bit and put this topic on the agenda of European networks like Eurocities, the Culture Forum, for example. Or we can find questions for another applications to the European Union funding programs. So that's my recommendation, to have more, to go further, and have more learning on the topic.
Thank you. My name's David Brindley, and I'm from the city of Brighton Hove, and I work in the public health department in the city council. So a bit different to the other partners. And public health, we commission services to support older people, including the Aging Well Festival, which you'll hear about later. And I'm covering two recommendations together. So diversity in age, art and culture, and the shifts in age dynamics. All of the cities have a growing population of older adults due to increases in life expectancy. But as our keynote speaker said, there's a growing body of evidence that creative aging can support these populations to stay healthy and independent for as long as possible. But we need to recognise that older adults are a highly diverse population whose personal circumstances may change dramatically over the course of their later working lives and retirement, and that the older demographic will undergo generational change just like any other age bracket. So, for example, someone who is in their 90s today will have spent their teenage years in the 1930s and 40s, which seems an incredibly long time ago. Most of these people won't have seen television regularly, probably until the 1960s or even 70s, and a trip to the theatre or the cinema would have been a special occasion, something to look forward to. But in Brighton and Hove, our older people's support services like Ageing Well are open to adults over the age of 50, or someone in their 50s today will have spent their teenage years in the 1980s. So, perhaps the MTV generation, or as we say in England, Thatcher's children. So, a bit political. But so they're personal. These two groups of people's personal tastes and norms regarding arts and culture will have been shaped by their very different contexts in growing up, including their education. They will have had very different experiences of art and culture at school, I imagine. Mm-hmm. So, what we need to do, when planning services for older adults, creative ageing services, we need to ensure there's a diverse range of cultural activities provided and made accessible to senior citizens. And important not to overlook those facing financial, health, biographical or social barriers. And cultural activities, venues and outreach strategies should be regularly assessed to see whether they are keeping pace with those generational changes, because there'll be another group coming up who will have had a different experience. So that's that. That's mine. Thank you.